welcome back to another Introverted Indies interview. Today I'm joined by Bonnie Bley, and I'm really excited to talk about her non-fiction books. It's the first non-fiction author I've had, actually. So, Bonnie, I'll hand over to you just to briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Bonnie Bley, and I live in Minnesota. I grew up in Montana and spent a lot of time in Wyoming, have family, tons of family in Wyoming. And the little southeast corner of Montana where I grew up was located, there was a large Indian reservation. And so I grew up amongst Native American Indians. And unfortunately, the county where I grew up now has the highest rates, incidences of missing and murdered Indigenous people. It
Mhm.
wasn't like that when I was growing up. So it was just, so that's how I got interested in this topic. And what my book is about the missing and murdered Indigenous people from the community where I grew up, in the county where I grew up.
Yeah, it sounds like a really important topic, and it's something that you became aware of as you grew up and noticed the statistics around it. First of all, what is your book called, just so we know to.
So my book is called Stolen Voices, Missing and Murdered in Bighorn County, and it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, pretty much any online retailer. If you just do a Google search, it'll pop up, and it's also available on audiobook, narrated by Katie Dwyer.
Yeah,
And
so available in a few different places. So
yeah,
I'm obviously a fiction writer, so I'm going to assume that the approach to writing a non-fiction book is fairly different to writing a made-up
right.
story, right? Because you're dealing with real people's lives and crime statistics. So where do you start with that? Like, did you obviously you were aware of what was happening and you
Right.
had an idea that you wanted to write about it. So where do you go from there?
So from there, I just started searching online, reconnecting with members of my community, reconnecting with former classmates, old friends that have been connected with since childhood. A lot of the people that I interviewed, I either knew personally or they were relatives of people that I know personally. So I just reached out to my friends and got connected with the correct people, the correct family spokespeople. There was a few people that I did reach out to that I didn't know, but I just reached out to them online and they were willing to talk. And then I just did a lot of newspaper research, a lot of Google searching, and I had stacks and stacks. I printed up every article. I've
Mhm.
subscribed to some newspapers online, and so that I could go back in their archives and get information from the past and from the present and read those. And I had probably about a 7-inch, 12-inch stack of research that I had
Mhm.
printed out, and then just filtering through all of that and organizing it.
Yeah, I imagine that took a while then, because it's something that there was a lot of research to do, a lot of things that you could read up
Yeah,
on, and also talking
yeah,
to
and there's
people.
a chapter that I address on hypothermia, and I actually read through about 3 different college dissertations on hypothermia,
Mm,
which was really interesting. I learned a lot while doing that, so it was fun.
yeah.
I enjoy research. I love research,
Hmm.
so it was really fun learning all the new stuff and
Mm,
really deep diving into some of the things, but it was
hmm.
shocking as well to find out what
Yeah.
the statistics are, was really
Hmm.
surprising.
Yeah, I can imagine. But that just shows the kind of importance of something, like your book, bringing all this information together, having that available for people to read, because it's not widely known, right? Like it's not widely
Right, right.
understood. Mhm.
Outside of the community, it's
Mhm.
like here where I live in the city, in the Twin Cities, a lot of people don't know about it. They don't know what's going
Mm,
on. And the reservations out here in Minnesota are much different than they are out west.
mhm,
So people tend to think of, people in the Twin Cities tend to think of reservations as big money casinos, kind of like what they see on TV, and
mhm,
they don't have any real grasp of what it's really like.
mm,
Because it's much different than that. The reality is so different.
mhm. Yeah. So, what did you enjoy most about doing the research and kind of pulling everything together?
I enjoyed the most just kind of learning more about the community that I grew up in because
Mm,
I moved away from there when I was 18.
Hmm.
Moved there when I was like 4 years old. So I grew up there from 4 to 18. So my
Hmm.
perspective was very much from a child, an adolescent, a teenager. So it was really fun to go back and revisit as an adult and to see
Hmm.
it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I can imagine it's because it's when you're a child or a teenager, you tend to be a bit more self-absorbed, right? Like in terms of
Right.
just your own life and coming back to the community, learning more about what was going on. Obviously, it's something that stood out to you because you chose to then go on to write about it. Because was kind of true crime or non-fiction, was that always something that you were interested in and thought about writing in?
I love true crime. I love real stories about real people. And so this book kind of chose me in a way. And without giving too much away, the first chapter explains how I came to be with this book,
Hmm.
or how the book came to be with me. um,
Yeah.
so it kind of chose me, and I just let it take me in the direction that it took me. So
Mm.
at the end, I was really happy with the people that I met along the way, and it was quite a journey. It was an emotional journey because there's some personal stories that I kind of touch on about, um, I kind of intertwine myself into it with my experiences. And so it was a little bit healing because there was
Hmm.
some, past trauma that kind of came up and about, which was real fun when I was driving home from work. And all of a sudden, I'm
Mm.
talking to my best friend on the phone about the book. And then I'm, bawling at the stoplight because I had remembered something that I had, suppressed
Yeah.
because of the topic and everything.
Yeah. So
So
it was.
it was an educational, yeah, so it was an educational and emotional journey as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It
And then
sounds like it. It's sorry, go
just
on, Bonnie.
hearing the stories and interviewing the people, having empathy for them and listening to them, and they're telling me with grief and in a place of grief, and that's hard to listen
Mm.
to without being unemotional. So the interviews were
Absolutely.
emotional.
Mm. Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm a counsellor, so I fully understand what the impact of hearing someone's story and hearing about their grief and trauma. So that must have been emotional, like you say. But I mean, was there? What did you do to kind of process that? Because imagine hearing difficult things for you meant that you had to kind of go away and then do something with that emotion that had come up, right?
Right, right. So I would have to, there were times where I just had to step away from it
Mm.
and not think about it, not process it, not touch it, not look at it, not do anything with it for a few days.
Mm.
And I would just set it aside and refocus, reshift, and then come back to it. My best friends were probably sick of me calling them up all the time, but they were very supportive and through the project and the process, and
Mm.
very understanding and stuff. So that was good too.
Yeah, having a support network is so important, isn't it?
Right,
Dealing with real life, with real people's lives, with horrific things that have happened.
right.
Um, so you got to look after yourself during that process.
Yeah, and my husband was super supportive too during the whole entire process. So he was,
Mm.
he got to listen to a lot of my just going on and on. So it was
Hmm.
nice. I was able to kind of, get things off my chest and talk about things with my husband and with my girlfriends and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
did have that outlet.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it was important to help you to write the book, to have that
Right.
outlet available. Hmm.
Yep. And then just, bouncing things off them, like, should
Mm.
I put this in? Like, is this too much? Is this, so I would kind of
Hmm.
float chapters by them and get their feedback on it and see,
Hmm.
where I was. And they would all tell me it was really good. And I'm like, no, are you telling me that because you love me, or are you telling me that because it's true? So that was kind
Hmm.
of a hard thing for me. Like, I thought they were just telling me that because they love me and they wanted to support me, but they
Hmm.
were telling the truth. So that was good.
Yes, good to know. Yeah. Because what's the process for publishing non-fiction? Because so fiction obviously is where I'm at. So I write the book, get beta readers, so people to kind of read through and give feedback on the story and plot holes. But it's different for non-fiction where you're dealing with again real life scenarios and kind of stats and
Right. So
information.
I went
Hmm.
through a hybrid publisher, and
Hmm.
they got the beta readers for me. So I didn't have to do
Hmm.
any of that. They did line by line
Okay.
editing.
Mm.
They did come back and tell me they were very excited because through the beta reading process, I scored a 98.5 out of 100, and they hadn't
Wow.
seen that for a
Hmm.
while. So they were really excited to be the ones that were, publishing it. And that was kind
Mm.
of first my real like, oh my gosh, I really did do a great job on this, was to
Hmm.
hear from people that, from those beta readers that don't know me, don't know anything about me, to have that good of
Mm.
feedback was
Mm.
really a highlight. So I knew I was doing something good.
Yeah. It's
And
it's nice
I,
to have that feedback, isn't it? To boost your confidence a bit.
it is. So that really made me say, okay, I'm really doing the right thing and whatnot. And I
Hmm.
went ahead with self-publishing just because I didn't want this topic and these stories to just sit on a shelf and sit on my
Mm.
laptop. I had to get them out. Um,
Hmm.
so I just went for it, and I'm
Hmm.
so glad I did. So glad I did. I've gotten a lot of
Yeah.
really good feedback from the community, um, from my friends and stuff like that. There's a couple of missing and murdered Indigenous people advocates that have reached out and thanked
Hmm.
me for my work. So that was just, I've won 9 literary awards for it so far. So I feel like my project is really validated
Mm.
and makes everything that I went through worth it.
Yeah. It sounds like it's been important to a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah. Makes it all worthwhile, like the journey that you went through.
Right, right, as well. Like all the
Hmm.
sleepless nights, all the tears, all the frustrations,
Mm.
um, some of the anger, just with some of the and you can kind of understand, like when you read the book, you'll kind of understand because a lot of people tell me that it does kind of make them angry.
Hmm.
It's not a feel good pick me up kind of book. There's no happy endings. Um, so it's different in that way because
Mm.
it does kind of, and I wrote it in such a way that kind of, it will, it'll stick with you for a little bit.
Mm. Yeah. With good reason as well, given the topic.
Right.
So you mentioned that you hybrid published it. How does that work then? Because again, that's not something I've done personally. So talk us through, like, how did you kind of find the hybrid publisher? Like, what was the process like for you working
So
with
the
them?
process was again more research. I just
Hmm.
researched different ones that looked at what they offered, for the price point and the services and to make sure that those matched up and were something that I was okay with.
Hmm.
And then I looked at their reviews to make sure that they had good reviews and that they were reputable and all that. So then when I picked one, I reached out
Hmm.
and they don't ever like with the hybrid publishes, you don't get the rejections because
Yeah.
obviously because you're paying for services.
Mm.
And but they do, I paid for line by line editing, I paid for the beta readers, I paid for the cover designs, and then they do all of that. They send it all back to me for approval. So I really do like the self-publishing through a hybrid publisher because
Hmm.
as an artist, as a writer, I have control. I have full control over if I don't like the edits, I can say no to them. And through the editing process, that kind of gave me some time to say, oh, okay, well, let's take this part out, or oh, wait, I need to add this in,
Hmm.
um, or they would change a sentence around that I didn't really care for, or they would change a sentence that I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I word it that way?
Mm.
So the editing was really fun, and it took a few months to do the editing process. It took like
Yeah.
3.5 months to do a full complete edit, and then they
Hmm.
designed the cover for me, and the first set of covers that they sent over, I didn't really care for, and so I sent it back
Hmm.
to them with suggestions, and then they sent me a cover, and it literally sent. I was like, "This is it." Like they understood the
Hmm.
assignment, so I was really happy with that.
Yeah.
And then I paid them to do some marketing right out of the gate to get me some followers on social media
Hmm.
to kind of get my name out there and everything.
Yeah.
So, but then once I was done with all those projects, then I have taken everything over on my
Hmm.
own. So now I do all the marketing, I handle all my social media accounts, which is fun. And I'm learning a lot about sales and marketing. Um,
Hmm.
but it's also fun because I have full control. Like I
Hmm.
get to reach out and to try to do book signings and stuff like that. So it's a fun process because I have control.
Yeah. And that's what I guess whether this is very similar to self-publishing, or the difference being the hybrid publisher provided services that they kind of helped you just find the beta readers, get the cover artist, all that kind of stuff. So it's just, it's a very similar path, isn't it, to self-publishing. And like you
Right,
say, you've retained that control.
right. And then I retain all the rights. I retain all the rights to it. So I was able to get the audiobook with someone that I wanted to do it with. And,
Mm,
um, I don't, I filed my own copyright. So it was just nice having that control too, that I own the rights to my work.
absolutely. So moving on to the marketing and publishing, marketing and social media side of things, then, because that's of course a huge part of being a writer actually. Like I don't know about you, but I didn't realize how much it was before going into being a published author, and then you kind of suddenly realize, oh, okay, this is quite a lot of work. So how have you found that, like managing the marketing side of things?
It's kind of crazy town. And I'm kind of all over the place with it because it's
Mm,
constantly changing. And I didn't go to school for marketing, so I really don't know what I'm doing. It's a lot of trial and error. I'm,
yeah.
I have a couple other friends who are authors, so I've reached out to them and said, hey, what worked for you? And so we kind of bounce off each other, like this worked, this didn't work. But it's just I'm finding very much a trial and error, and you just kind of have to just roll with it, and
Yeah.
budget your marketing dollars for okay, I'm going to go with this, and it's
Hmm.
also been an expensive journey with that because marketing isn't cheap. Um,
Mm,
and then it's kind of frustrating when you do throw a lot of money at something and then it doesn't pan out. Um, it's kind of the learning curve. It's
mhm.
an expensive learning curve.
Absolutely, it
But
is.
it's fun. It's fun, and I've learned so much.
It's definitely a learning curve. I'm totally with you there. It's because I think again a lot of authors are in that same boat of not knowing much about marketing, if anything.
Right.
Um, and then yeah, you suddenly find yourself having to market this book that you've written. And well, I think actually having those author friends, like you said, it's can be very helpful because it's, I don't know about you, but a lot of learning from other authors that perhaps have written in similar genres, seeing what works for them. But I also find kind of it's a bit of a, even if something works for a similar author to you, doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Right. Because it's not a black and white
Mm,
cookie cutter, with marketing. It isn't
yeah.
step by step by step because what could
Hmm.
work for me might not work for the next person, or what worked for
Hmm.
them might not work for me. So it's
Yeah.
really very individualized, and just it's an expensive learning curve, but it's been a lot of
Yeah.
fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Mm. Yeah. That's the main thing, right? Like you're enjoying the process.
Right, right.
Um, so are you working on anything else, or would you write in, if you do write another book, will it be the same genre?
I have a couple ideas
Hmm.
that are just kind of just kind of hashing out a little bit following. There's one story in the book that, since being published, there was an arrest made. So the thought of doing a full book on her story and the up to date information has crossed my mind. And then there's another girl who she's been missing since 2017, and her family still has no answers. Her
Mm.
sister is very present on social media, and it keeps showing up in my feed. So there's a possibility there. I'm thinking, I don't know that family. They're from a different part. They're from Montana, but they're from a different part of the state that I'm not familiar with because Montana is a really big state, and I grew up in the southeast corner, and
Hmm.
this girl went missing from the northwest corner, but so to do that, I would have to go back to my home state and kind of get a feel for the area, interview a lot of
Hmm.
people and stuff like that. So that one is
Hmm.
just kind of I'm just taking notes on it right now and seeing where that leads, and hopefully in the future I can run with that one. So yeah, I think I'll stay in the true crime genre at least for a
Hmm.
while, but I know
Yeah.
I know some authors get stuck in a niche and some don't, and I really haven't quite figured out, like, okay, now that I did this, now what? Like, do I stay in true
Hmm.
crime or do I? But I do like to write nonfiction more than fiction,
Yeah.
um, because when you're writing about stories, you have to keep it all straight and keep the characters straight, and you know, so I tend to gravitate more towards nonfiction.
Yeah. And that's totally fair enough, because it's perhaps it's that that you like to gather all the information and piece all that together rather than
Right.
making something up. But also, if you have an interest in that true crime stories and there are stories to tell, especially around, place that you grew up,
Yeah.
why not pursue that?
Yeah. And sadly, there's an abundance of stories,
Mm,
and an abundance of stories that they just don't feel that they're getting any attention. And so if I
yeah.
can use my voice to help raise attention, um, maybe they'll get solved. Maybe there'll be an arrest made. Maybe I can do some good
Hmm.
from, help out, and the families can get the closure that they need, because a lot of
Mm,
times, like that family in the northwest corner of Montana, they don't have answers. No one's been
mm,
arrested.
yeah.
Um, there's still so many questions and so many
Hmm.
mysteries, and the family they just want that closure.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, what do you do when you're not writing, Bonnie? Because this is obviously writing can take up a lot of time, and if you're doing research as well, that must be very time consuming.
The research is time consuming.
Mm,
So I do work a full-time job
hmm.
um, to fund my writing. And when I'm not working or marketing or working on the book, I am hanging out with my family, hanging out with my friends. I like to get out in nature. We have a family cabin up in the north on the north shore of Lake Superior, that I absolutely love going to because we have no internet, we have no TV up there, we have no cell service. So it's really nice to just go and get completely unplugged and hang out in
Mm,
nature. My family still lives out west, so I get out there about once a year, and my mom doesn't have a TV, so we'll listen to the radio, we'll just visit, we'll just get unplugged. My brother and my son and I will go hiking, we'll go mountain trekking, which I absolutely love doing. And then I love chasing the northern lights. We're in the maximum solar cycle this year, which has really been really exciting. I've seen some really
mm,
incredible northern light shows, um,
yeah.
and it's fun, but that kind of keeps you up all night. So that's a little bit of a challenge when you're trying to work and
Yeah,
stay
but I don't
active.
blame you because I'd be looking for them as well. I'm
Yeah,
jealous. It sounds amazing.
yeah, it's really been fun.
Yeah, and that ability to go to the cabin and disconnect sounds probably very valuable, especially when you're researching heavy topics. The social media thing can feel like it takes up a lot of mental energy,
It
right? And
does,
so to be able to disconnect from that is really
yeah.
great.
So and up there, you just kind of feel like you're in your own little world, and you can just, like we'll sit on the dock and fish, and you just listen to nature. You can hear the
Mm,
loons. You can hear the wind. You can hear the lake. The sound of the water, and it's just so very relaxing.
mm,
And the same as when I'm hiking in the mountains, like, you can hear your heartbeat, you can hear your breath, you can hear the wind in the trees and the leaves, and it's
hmm.
just so therapeutic. It's
Yeah,
extremely
that sounds
therapeutic.
amazing. Yeah, absolutely. So what tips or advice would you give Bonnie to someone who's setting out on the same journey, writing non-fiction, perhaps true crime? what's the kind of, I guess, the top things that you've learned in your writing journey so far?
To not self-doubt myself and not get in the way of myself.
Mm,
Um, I did kinda do a lot of, like, "Am I doing the right thing? Am I good enough? Am I really the one to be doing this?" So I kinda went through a lot of that, and I just had to get out
hmm.
of my own way. I just had to let it happen, trust the process, and just go for it.
Yeah, I think that goes for every writer actually. There's not a writer I've spoken to that doesn't have some form of self-doubt, and it really can get in the way.
Yeah, and so I just forced myself to get out of my comfort zone, because your comfort zone is a safe space, and I had to just really force myself to, push myself to get out of that comfort zone and to do
Mm,
things that I normally would have just said, "Well, maybe somebody else can do that," or, you know, "I'm fine just being who I am."
yeah.
Um, so that was fun because I think I've grown as a person through this project as well because I forced
Hmm.
myself out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, that's often the hardest bit. But were there any bits in particular where you had to really challenge yourself to step outside of that comfort zone?
Um, so my book is written from the perspective of the victim, which was very difficult because I
Mm,
was putting myself, like, what would it be like if I was them and going through what they had gone through, which
yeah.
was really difficult. And living in safe suburbia and not ever have dealing with a lot, crime and that much, tragedy or trauma.
Mm,
That was hard to put myself in their shoes, and it really opened my eyes to,
mhm.
uh, what it would have felt like for them.
Yeah. And hopefully that has then provided the ability to readers to empathize as well and to understand how scary that must be, how terrifying
Right.
these experiences, to understand the importance of talking about these stories and these women.
Right. And there's a lot of areas in the book that I touch on that I think a lot of just women in general can relate with. They might be, because it did bring up some of that in myself when I was writing it, when I was reading some of the statistics. I was like, wow, I didn't really realize I was part of a statistic. So I think there's bits and pieces that probably every woman can relate to
Mhm,
because I don't just tell a lot of sad stories. I do touch on issues that the community's faces. There's a chapter on drugs and alcohol. There's a chapter on hypothermia.
mhm,
Um, there's different chapters in between to kind of lighten it up a little bit. You don't want to read chapter after chapter of doom and sadness.
mhm,
Um, so there's a lot of statistics in there, and I think a lot of women reading the book can go, "Oh wow, I can relate to that," or "Oh, that
mm.
happened to me, and I didn't realize that I was part of this statistic."
Yeah, I think this it makes it all the more important for people to read stuff like that, especially right now, with everything that's happening in America, across the world, in terms of like women's rights and um, to understand these different perspectives is really important.
Right, right. And it just kind of makes you feel too like, "Hey, I'm not alone in this. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have to carry this, this bad thing that happened to me. I don't have to carry that alone. Like, I can,
Mm,
there's other women out there that have gone through the same thing that I have." And so I hope, that message is conveyed to, like, if there is
mm,
someone who um, maybe out of shame or guilt or, or whatever, they felt like they've never been able to talk about it, to just kind of let them know they would be able to connect in a way that just tells them you're not alone.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Bonnie. So we're on to the quick fire round. So
Okay,
got just four questions for you. It
sure.
says one answer, no explanation, but to be honest, I never stick to that. I usually ask about what's said. So we'll just go for it. So,
Okay.
favorite book?
My favorite book. So I have a few favorite books. It's hard to just have one favorite book. And when I was a kid, I still have my four favorite books from when I was a kid
Oh,
that
wow.
I thought I would share. Yeah. So they're
Mhm,
pretty old and kind of ratted. They got a lot of love when I was little. So I had this little Tom and Jerry book that I read. It fit in my pocket. I took it everywhere I went. It's written on the inside. It's got pen marks. It was very well loved, and this was one of
Yeah.
my favorites when I was a little kid. My other one is Alice in Wonderland.
Ah. Hmm.
And again, this book, I think I took it to school with me every day. It's got old pictures in it, it's
Mm.
illustrated, it's got some really pretty, um,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
you know, so this is fun that I still have. It's got like a burnt edge. I don't know if that was just from me or from time or if it was originally like that. I'm not sure. It's a pretty
Mm.
old book, but that was my favorite. And
Hmm.
then the mother cat story. I love cats.
Hmm.
I volunteered at a wildcat sanctuary, and so this was a favorite too. The corners all taped together, the pages on the inside are a little bit rough. And then this Richard Scarry book. And again,
Hmm.
it's got, I wrote my name on the back of it when I was little in big letters, and it's also falling apart, but
Oh.
it's kind of fun. And I read some of these stories to my kids because I've had this book for just, since I was like 5, 6. Um,
Hmm.
and so this book is kind of fun to pull out every now and then just because it brings back so many memories. And
Yeah.
when I read it, some of the stories in here when my kids were little. So those are my favorite childhood books.
Hmm.
I'm a fan of Shakespeare. I love Merchant in Venice. My favorite Poe story is The Black Cat. Obviously, I love cats. Um, and then I do like Hemingway. And I was able to kind of, one of the most exciting things about that is a couple of years ago, my family and I went down to Miami, and we went down to Key West and visited the Hemingway house. And I was just like,
Mm.
a little 5-year-old at Christmas time because they had all the cats and, just his history and just all the books and we got to see where he wrote most of his books. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is so exciting. Um,
Yeah.
so, just it kind of depends on what stage in life were my favorites, but it
Mm.
is kind of fun that I still have these childhood favorites.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and my mom was a librarian growing up. When I was in second grade, she got a job at the library, and she worked there her whole career. So she was always bringing books home, and so I always had my nose in a book growing up constantly.
That's great. Yeah, it's lovely that you still have all those to share with your kids as well. That's really nice. So next question is favorite game.
My favorite game is I love the board game Clue and
Hmm.
Pictionary. Pictionary is fun. When we take road trips, when my kids were little, we would play road trip bingo, and I would make up bingo cards for the family of different things that we would see along the way. Um, all growing up, my grandparents, when I would visit them, they didn't have a TV, so we would play a lot of card games. And I learned how to play casino, um, like when I was like 7 years old. I'm, trying to be a card shark. So those are fun too. Like when I play card games,
Mm.
it just takes me back to a time when, I was hanging out with grandma and grandpa with, just each other's company, no radio, no TV.
Yeah, that's lovely. Favorite film?
My favorite film, again, it's hard to pick just one. I love The Untouchables is one of my favorites that I watch a lot. Mystic Pizza, Last of the Mohicans, of course, The Breakfast Club, and Pretty in Pink is one of my favorites. Love that. I had that soundtrack I played all the time. I think I went through about 2 or 3 cassette tapes of it because it would get eaten and I'd have to buy a new one. And I played it constantly.
Amazing. And favorite writing beverage?
So it depends on what time of the day it is. If
Hmm.
I'm up early in the morning writing, it's some kind of herbal tea. I'm a little bit of a tea snob. I like the Roy Boy tea. I like the green tea, the white tea.
Hmm.
I have some dandelion tea. So in the early morning, it's a tea.
Hmm.
If I'm up late at night or a weekend, depending on what kind of mood I'm in. I'll have either tequila or a good bourbon.
Hmm. Nice. Okay, Bonnie. Well, it's been lovely chatting. So, to wrap up, can you let us know where is best to stay in touch with you and up to date with your latest upcoming projects?
Yeah, so I have a website, bonniebley.com, just my name.
Hmm.
and that has links to purchase the book. I am on Goodreads. I'm on Instagram and TikTok. I have an account on Blue Sky. I don't have very many followers there yet, but hopefully that'll change one of these days. I am on Facebook, but for some reason my Facebook account is been suspended, and I don't have any way to appeal it, or I'm not sure what happened there because it's been
Hmm.
active for a year or so. My
Yeah.
Facebook page got shut down, and I have no idea when it's going to be reactivated. There's no one to contact about it or appeal to file, and so that
Hmm.
one's kind of it's just dead in the water right now. Definitely Instagram and TikTok and
Hmm.
Goodreads and my webpage.
Great. And I'll put all the links below the video as well.
Yep.
But thank you so much for joining me, Bonnie. It's been amazing talking to you.
Thank you. It's been a joy and a pleasure talking with you too.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.